Welcome to WooEnglish. Today, you will hear a powerful story. A story about the Earth waking up after 12,000 years of silence. A volcano in Ethiopia opened its eyes. The sky turned dark, and the world felt the shock across continents. This is not just science. This is human drama, nature, and discovery. Stay with me. Learn English through story. And let's begin this journey together. Chapter 1. The morning the volcano woke up. The morning began like any other morning in the Afar region of Ethiopia. The air was dry. The wind was slow. The desert was quiet. Almost too quiet. People in the small villages near the mountain were starting their day. Herders were preparing to take their goats and cows outside. Women were collecting water. Children were waking up to the soft light of sunrise. No one knew that this day would become one of the most important days in the geological history of Africa. Everything changed at 8:30 in the morning. At first, it was only a strange sound. A deep, heavy sound, like something moving under the ground. Some villagers thought it was a distant truck. Others believed it was a small earthquake. But the sound continued. Stronger. Closer. Louder. The ground began to shake under their feet. People looked at each other with fear. Animals became restless. Goats jumped. Cows began to run in circles. The shaking grew until dishes fell, doors opened by themselves, and dust rose from the dry earth. Then it happened. A loud boom came from the direction of the mountain, so loud that many people said it felt like a bomb exploding. A huge cloud rose above the peak, dark and thick, blocking the early morning sun. The sky, which was bright only moments before, suddenly turned into a wall of black and gray. For a few seconds, silence returned. The villagers stood without moving. Some covered their ears. Some held their children. Some stared at the mountain with wide, shocked eyes. And then, the sky began to fall. Not rain, not sand, but ash. A soft gray dust first, like flour from the air. Then a heavier ash. Tiny pieces of volcanic glass and rock dropped on rooftops, on clothes, on animals, on the ground. The world turned gray in minutes. The people of Afar realized the truth. The Haile Gubi volcano had woken up after 12,000 years of silence. No one alive had ever seen it erupt. Not their parents, not their grandparents, not even the stories of old people. This mountain was considered quiet, peaceful, harmless. Most villagers thought it would never erupt again. But beneath their feet, deep inside the earth, pressure was building for thousands of years. Until this morning. The cloud above the volcano grew higher and higher. It rose like a giant tower into the sky. Satellite images later showed that the ash column reached 14 kilometers above the earth. That is higher than many airplanes fly. The darkness became so strong that people had to use lamps and phone lights, even though it was still morning. The sun disappeared behind the ash. The air smelled like smoke and sulfur. Some villagers said their eyes burned. Others said breathing became difficult. Parents gathered their children and rushed into houses. Herders tried to save their animals, pushing them into shelters or tying them close. The ash made every sound softer, as if the world was covered by a thick blanket. Inside the houses, people listened to the strange noises outside, the falling ash, the far thunder-like rumble from the volcano, and the shaking ground. Some whispered prayers. Others waited in shock, not knowing what to do. No alarms, no warnings, no radio messages. No one could tell them what was happening or how long it would continue. The eruption grew stronger. More ash, more rumbling, more shaking. Then another shock wave hit the village. A sudden blast of hot air and dust pushed through the door cracks. Children cried. Animals screamed. Families held each other tighter. But slowly, after what felt like many hours, the rumbling began to weaken. The ash continued to fall, but the mountain's voice became softer, like a tired giant losing energy. Villagers began to open their doors again. Some stepped outside carefully. The world they saw did not look like the world they knew. The roads were gone, under a thick layer of ash. Plants were covered. The normally brown desert looked white and gray. It felt like winter snow, but darker, heavier, dirtier. The air was still, heavy with dust. No birds, no wind, no sound. A few people climbed small hills to look at the volcano. The peak was still smoking. A gray cloud continued to rise slowly from the crater, like the breath of a giant waking from a long sleep. One old man said quietly, "This mountain was silent all my life. I thought it would sleep forever." Another replied, "The earth remembers. We do not." They did not know that this eruption would send ash across continents, that flights would be canceled, that scientists around the world would begin to study the event, that countries far away would feel the effect in their skies. For the people of afar, this was not a scientific event. It was a shock, a test, a reminder that nature is always stronger than human plans. And as the ash settled slowly over the land, one question stayed in everyone's mind. Why did the volcano wake up now, after 12,000 years of silence? Chapter 2. A Land Built by Fire and Time. To understand why the Haley-Gubi volcano woke up, we must look at the land underneath it, not the villages, not the mountains, but the deep, hidden world below the surface of Ethiopia. A world shaped by fire, pressure, and slow movements that began millions of years ago. The Afar Depression is one of the most unusual places on Earth. Scientists call it a geological laboratory because it shows us how continents split, how oceans are born, and how the Earth changes shape. But for the people who live there, it is simply home, a hot, dry desert where life is hard, but community is strong. The land looks simple on the surface: brown hills, deep cracks, long flat areas of salt and rock. But the real story lies below. 3 giant tectonic plates are moving under this area. The African plate, the Arabian plate, the Somali plate. These plates are like slow, heavy puzzle pieces that make up the Earth's crust. They move only a few centimeters every year. It is slow, almost invisible. No one can see it with their eyes. But with time, these movements change everything. In Afar, the plates are not coming together. They are pulling apart, When this happens, the ground stretches, cracks, and becomes thinner. When the crust becomes thin, hot magma from deep inside the earth has an easier path to rise. This is why the Afar region has many volcanoes, some known, some hidden, and some that have not erupted for thousands of years. The Haile Gubi volcano is one of them. For thousands of years, it looked calm. No smoke, no heat, no earthquakes. People believed it was part of the landscape, a silent witness to history. But under it, the crust was slowly changing. Scientists who study the region explain it like this. When plates pull apart, the earth becomes like a stretched piece of fabric. At some point, it tears. The Afar Depression is one of those tears, and the tear is growing. Millions of years from now, this area may become a new ocean. The Red Sea could expand. The Horn of Africa could separate from the continent. We are watching the early steps of a future that humans will never fully see. But even if the process is slow, sometimes the Earth releases energy suddenly. Volcanoes are one of the ways this energy escapes. For years, scientists watched other volcanoes in the Afar region, like Erta Al and Dalal, because they are active and easy to study. But Haile Gubi was different. It was considered inactive. It had no record of eruption in the last 12,000 years. Many believed it might be extinct. But beneath its surface, magma was moving quietly. Satellite studies later showed something interesting. In the months before the eruption, the ground around the volcano rose by a few centimeters. This is a sign that magma was pushing upward, searching for a way out. But because the volcano had no proper monitoring system, this sign was not noticed in time. The Afar region is also difficult to study. Temperatures can reach 50 degrees Celsius. The land is remote. There are few roads, few scientific stations. This makes the volcanoes here what researchers call blind spots. No one sees the warning until it becomes too late. Inside the earth, the magma under Haile Gubi had been collecting for a long time. Gas was building pressure. The crust above it was slowly weakening. And at some point, after thousands of years of silence, the pressure became too strong. It needed a release. When the crust finally cracked on that November morning, the eruption was violent because the magma had high gas content. It did not come out gently like in Hawaii. It exploded upward as ash and hot gases. This type of eruption is surprising in a shield volcano, which is normally calm and slow. But the geology of Afar is not normal. It is a place where rules break, where the earth behaves in unexpected ways. Scientists say that when a volcano is quiet for too long, that does not always mean safety. Sometimes it means pressure is still building, silently. The people of Afar live with this reality, even if they do not call it by scientific names. They know the land shakes sometimes. They know the air gets hot with no reason. They feel the tension of the earth under their feet. This connection between people and land is old. They depend on the ground for their animals, their water, their life. But this same ground can change in a moment. In the days after the eruption, experts came to the region to study the land. They placed instruments, took samples of ash, and flew drones over the crater. They wanted to understand what happened and what might happen next. One scientist said something that stayed in many minds. In afar, nothing is truly asleep. Everything is moving, even if we do not see it. This chapter of the story is not only about a volcano. It is about a region shaped by deep forces, slow forces, powerful forces. It reminds us that the earth is alive. It stretches, breaks, heats, cools, grows, and changes. The eruption of Haile Gubi was not an accident. It was part of a much bigger picture, a picture written by fire and time. Chapter 3. The eruption that reached the sky. The sun was still rising when the volcano made its second surprise. People in afar saw the first dark cloud. But they did not know that this was only the beginning. Now imagine the scene as if you are standing there. The air is thick. The ground is shaking. The sky is almost black. And in front of you stands a mountain that has just awakened after 12,000 years. The volcano inhaled, and then exhaled with a force the world had not seen in decades. A second explosion came from deep inside the earth. It was louder, sharper, stronger. A wave of sound rolled across the desert like a giant drum. People miles away felt it in their chests. Animals began to run, confused and terrified. The few trees around the village bent under the pressure of the blast. Then the mountain opened its throat again. And this time, the ash did not rise slowly. It shot upward with incredible power, straight into the sky, like a massive gray fountain made of smoke, dust, and broken rock. Because this moment changed everything. The ash climbed higher, and higher, and higher, until it reached 14 kilometers above the earth, a height so extreme that even airplanes must be careful. It entered the stratosphere, where winds are stronger and faster. Up there, nothing stops the ash. It travels. It spreads. It crosses borders without asking permission. For a few minutes, the sky above afar looked like night. A giant umbrella of gray covered the sun. The shape was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom, like a mushroom cloud from an explosion. Scientists later said this type of cloud is called a plume. But the people of afar did not need scientific names. They knew what they saw. A mountain breathing fire. A sky full of dust. A strange silence falling over everything. Inside the plume, temperatures were extremely high. Hot gas pushed the ash upward with incredible speed. Tiny pieces of volcanic glass mixed with sulfur and rock floated inside the cloud. They were small, smaller than grains of sand, but sharp like blades. Winds in the upper atmosphere caught the ash and pulled it to the east. The cloud did not stay above Ethiopia. It started a long journey across continents. First, it moved across the Red Sea, passing over the quiet blue water like a moving shadow. Then it reached Yemen. People woke up and saw their skies turning gray. Cars, farms, and rooftops were covered by thin layers of ash. Authorities told families to stay inside, to close water tanks, and to protect their eyes and lungs. But the cloud kept moving. It entered Oman, rising above the desert at around 35,000 feet. Pilots reported unusual colors in the sky, strange orange and pink tones created by sunlight scattering through the ash. From Oman, the winds carried it further east towards Pakistan, towards India, towards China. In the capital city of Delhi, the ash mixed with local pollution. People looked at the horizon and wondered why the sky looked heavier, darker, different. Many did not know that the answer was more than 3,000 kilometers away, in a desert village in Ethiopia. The ash cloud moved like a traveler who never stops. Every hour, it crossed new regions. Every hour, it surprised new countries. It forced airplanes to change their routes. It stopped flights. It created confusion in airports across Asia. Think about this for a moment. A volcano in a small, remote part of Africa sent a cloud that touched cities on the other side of the continent. It moved across cultures, languages, and borders. It connected the world in a way no one expected. Inside the cloud, tiny particles of ash continued to float. These particles do not fall quickly. They can stay in the sky for weeks. They can circle the planet. They can change the color of sunsets and sunrises. And while the ash traveled outward, the people of afar looked upward with fear. The sound of the explosion still echoed in their ears. Their homes were covered in gray. The ground felt different under their feet. Some said it felt like the earth was breathing. Scientists around the world began watching the volcano through satellite images. They saw the plume grow. They saw it stretch across the Red Sea. They watched its direction, height, and speed. For many, this was the first time a sleeping volcano showed such power. The eruption was not only a natural event, it was a message that the earth is alive, a message that the forces below our feet are stronger than anything humans can build. A message that a single volcano, forgotten for thousands of years, can suddenly change the sky of an entire region. As the ash continued its long journey, the world started to understand that this eruption was more than a local disaster. It was a global warning, a reminder that even when the earth is silent, it is never truly asleep. Chapter 4. When Ash Stops the Airplanes. The ash cloud continued its long journey across the sky. It moved like a giant shadow, slow but unstoppable. Below it, the world kept living its normal life. Airports busy, planes rising, passengers traveling, pilots following their routes. No one imagining that something high above them was about to change everything. Airplanes are designed to cross storms. They can fly through rain, wind, and thick clouds. But there is one thing they cannot fight: volcanic ash. Pilots fear it more than lightning. Engineers fear it more than ice. Airlines fear it more than strong winds. And on this day, the ash cloud from Ethiopia became their nightmare. High in the sky, at the same altitude as commercial airplanes, the clouds spread like a wide gray blanket. It looked soft from far away. It looked harmless to the eye. But inside, it were millions and millions of tiny particles, sharp, glassy, and dangerous. Volcanic ash is not like dust from the desert. It is not like smoke from a fire. It is made of microscopic pieces of volcanic glass, rock, and minerals created when magma explodes. Each piece is as sharp as a knife. When swallowed into a jet engine, the heat inside the engine melts the ash. It becomes liquid. Then the cold air freezes it again into hard glass, This glass sticks to the engine parts like glue, blocking the airflow. The engine can stop in seconds. Imagine a plane flying at 30,000 feet, and the engines stop. There is no safe place to land. No road, no runway, only the sky. This is why airplane authorities reacted fast. In India, pilots started reporting strange colors in the sky. Some saw orange and pink layers at unusual angles. Others smelled something strange, something like burnt rubber. Airlines took no risk. Air India canceled flights. Akasa Air stopped its Middle East routes. At Delhi Airport, one of the busiest airports in Asia, flights were delayed, rerouted, or shut down completely. In Pakistan, meteorologists began tracking the ash cloud as it moved across the upper atmosphere. In Oman, aviation officials sent warnings to pilots. They told them to avoid the ash, to fly lower or higher, to change their routes completely. In every country touched by the cloud, the message was the same. Stay away. Do not enter the danger zone. But the story does not end with canceled flights. Inside the cockpits of airplanes still in the air, pilots became the first line of defense. They were trained for this, but the fear is always there. A pilot near the Red Sea spoke to the control tower. I see something in the sky. Visibility is low. I think it is ash. Controllers told him to turn south immediately. The change in direction added 2 extra hours to the flight. But it saved the engines from entering the cloud. Another pilot above the Arabian Sea reported, "We smell sulfur." That smell is a warning sign, the first sign that ash is near. He changed altitude quickly, climbing several thousand feet to escape the danger. Meanwhile, on the ground, meteorologists worked non-stop. They watched satellite images every hour. They used computer models to predict where the cloud would move. They sent updates to every airport in the region. The ash did not stay still. It drifted. It turned. It stretched into thin lines. Then it thickened again as winds pushed it. It was like watching a wild animal move through the sky, quiet, unpredictable, and capable of great damage. Airlines knew the risk. History had taught them. In 1982, a British Airways plane flew into ash over Indonesia. All 4 engines stopped. The plane dropped from 37,000 feet to only 12,000 feet before the pilots finally restarted the engines. In 2010, ash from the Eyjafjallajökull volcano in Iceland shut down European airspace for days. Millions of passengers were stranded. Airports were silent. Flights were canceled across the entire continent. Now, in 2025, the same danger appeared again. But this time, the ash traveled much farther, from Ethiopia to India, from a desert village to some of the busiest skies in the world. In airports across the region, passengers waited in long lines. Some were confused, some were angry, some simply stared at the screens showing "canceled" again and again. Most did not understand how a volcano thousands of kilometers away could affect their travel. But that is the power of volcanic ash. It ignores distance. It ignores borders. On farms in Ethiopia and Yemen, the ash fell like gray snow. But in the sky above Oman and India, the ash floated like invisible needles. Pilots described the feeling of flying near ash as unnatural. The sky becomes hazy. The colors become strange. The engines sound different. The plane seems to move through a thick fog of glass. No airline wants to risk a disaster. No pilot wants to gamble with his engines. So the safest decision was the simplest one. Stop the flights. Wait. Watch the sky. This chapter is not only about airplanes. It is about how connected our world truly is. A volcano in a remote part of Ethiopia can stop a flight in Delhi. Ash from a mountain in Africa can change the travel plans of passengers in Oman. A hidden lake of magma can affect airports thousands of kilometers away. One eruption, one cloud, one event. And suddenly, the sky is no longer safe. Chapter 5. Life under the ash cloud. The ash cloud kept moving across the sky. But on the ground, in the heart of afar, people were facing a different world. A quieter world. A heavier world. A world where the sun disappeared, the air changed, and everything familiar took a darker color. When the first ash fell, many villagers thought it would stop quickly. They believed the volcano would roar once, then return to silence. That is what old stories told them. But this time, the sky had other plans. Hour after hour, the ash continued to fall. It did not fall like rain. It did not fall like sand. It fell like a slow, endless snow, gray, dry, and cold. Each grain was small, lighter than dust, but sharp enough to scratch skin and eyes. Soon, the roofs of houses were covered. The trees were covered. Animals were covered. Even the footsteps of children disappeared under the soft, gray surface. Life under the ash cloud felt strange. The sound of the world changed. The desert, usually loud with wind and animals, became almost silent. Ash absorbs sound. Voices sounded softer. Footsteps felt distant. Even the cries of goats and cows became muted. Families stayed inside their small huts, listening to the gentle fall of ash on the roofs. Some whispered prayers. Some tried to sweep the ash away, but more ash always came. For every handful removed, 2 more returned. Inside the houses, people used cloth to cover their noses and mouths. The air tasted bitter. It smelled like smoke and sulfur. Children asked their parents, "When will the sky come back?" Parents had no answer. Several herders walked outside slowly, trying to see where their animals had gone. The goat paths they knew so well were hidden. Landmarks disappeared. Even the mountains on the horizon looked softer, darker, changed by the thick curtain of ash. For the animals, life became harder. Goats searched for grass, but found only gray powder. Cows tried to eat, but the ash covered everything. Some animals became sick. Others grew weak from hunger. In a region where livestock is life itself, this was a deep wound. Water was another problem. Afar already lacks water. Every drop is precious, but now ash floated into wells and water tanks. The water turned cloudy and unsafe. Women had to filter it again and again. Some boiled it for hours. Still, many were not sure it was clean. In one village, a woman named Sada bent over her small water jar. She looked at the ash floating on top. She whispered, "How can we drink this? How can we live like this?" Her children sat beside her, tired and confused. Their small hands were covered in gray. Nearby, a herder named Ibrahim stood next to his cows. He touched the ash on their backs. He said quietly, "I have never seen the land like this. It is like the earth is sick." His cows looked thin and scared. Their eyes were red from irritation. But even in this difficult moment, the people of Afar showed strength. They helped one another. They shared food. They moved animals to safer places. They cleaned roofs before they collapsed under the weight of ash. Children, even though afraid, began to play again. Some drew shapes in the ash. Some made small hills and mountains with it. Their laughter brought a small light to the gray world. At night, the sky looked different too. The ash cloud reflected the moonlight, making the desert glow in a pale silver color. It was beautiful and frightening at the same time. The villagers sat outside their houses, watching the glowing sky. They wondered if the volcano would erupt again. They wondered when the ash would stop. They wondered what tomorrow would bring. In the distance, the volcano still smoked. A thin column of ash rose slowly from its peak. It looked tired, like a giant catching its breath. But no one knew if it was truly resting or preparing for another surprise. In the days after the eruption, help began to arrive. Scientists came with masks and equipment. They collected ash samples. They talked to the villagers. They explained the dangers. They told people to stay inside as much as possible. Local authorities tried to bring clean water and food, but the roads were difficult and the villages were far apart. Every step toward safety required time. Still, the people survived. They had survived heat, drought, and storms before. This was different, but not impossible. Their lives were slow now. Their world was quiet. But their spirits remained strong. Life under the ash cloud taught them something important. The earth can change in a single moment. The sky can disappear without warning. And the land they trust can suddenly turn against them. But it also showed them the power of community, patience, and hope. Every day, the ash became a little lighter. Every day, the sky grew a little brighter. Every day, the volcano's voice became quieter. The people of Afar waited. They watched. They listened. Because when you live under a volcano, you learn to understand silence as much as noise. Chapter 6. Searching for the Real Cause. The ash was still falling when the first scientists arrived in the Afar region. They came in white trucks, carrying instruments, masks, water, and notebooks. The villagers watched them from a distance. Some felt hopeful. Some felt curious. Some felt afraid of what the scientists might discover. When a volcano wakes up after 12,000 years, the world must ask one question: why now? Was it chance? Was it pressure? Was it the movement of the earth beneath our feet? Or was it something deeper that no one had seen coming? The scientists walked carefully across the gray land. Ash covered their boots. The air made their eyes water. But they continued step by step toward the volcano itself. Their journey began with the most basic job of all: observing. They studied the color of the ash. They touched the surface of the rocks. They listened to the small vibrations under the ground. They watched the smoke rising slowly from the crater. One geologist, an older man with calm eyes, said softly, "The earth does not speak loudly. You must listen to the quiet sounds. And that is what they did. The first clue was found in the ash. It was rich with gas, especially sulfur. This meant the magma inside the volcano had been rising slowly for a long time. Gas had been building pressure beneath the surface. But without proper monitoring stations in the region, no one saw the signs. The second clue came from satellite images. Scientists compared pictures from the months before the eruption with pictures taken afterward. They discovered something interesting. The ground around the volcano had risen slightly, only a few centimeters, but enough to show that magma was pushing upward from below. A female scientist pointed to the images and said, "This land was breathing before the eruption, but we did not notice the breath." The third clue came from old seismic records. Small earthquakes had been shaking the region months before the eruption. Not strong enough to destroy houses, but strong enough to warn anyone who knows the language of the earth. These earthquakes were signals, messages, signs that something deep below was moving. But the region lacked equipment. No early warning systems, no active geological stations. The volcano was a blind spot, unseen, unheard, unmeasured. And so the pressure continued to build in silence until the eruption finally broke the quiet. But there was a bigger question. Why did this volcano, silent for 12,000 years, wake up so explosively? To answer this, the scientists studied the Afar Depression itself. The land here is unique. It is not just a valley. It is the birthplace of a future ocean. Tectonic plates are pulling apart beneath it. The African plate, the Arabian plate, and the Somali plate all push away from each other. When plates move apart, hot magma rises to fill the space. Sometimes it flows gently. Sometimes it stays deep under the ground. And sometimes, if the conditions are right, it explodes upward. A young researcher explained it simply. When the continent stretches, it becomes thinner. When it becomes thinner, magma finds cracks more easily. When it finds cracks, the volcano can wake up. This is why the Haile Gooby eruption was not a random accident. It was part of a much bigger process, a geological process that has been shaping Africa for millions of years. The scientists also found heat signatures under the ground. These signatures suggested that other volcanoes in the region were also under pressure, not erupting yet, but active, alive, watching. This discovery made the scientists uneasy. They spoke with seriousness and caution. One of them said, "This was not only one volcano waking up. It may be part of a larger movement under the earth." Another added, "We must study this region more carefully. If one volcano can surprise us like this, others may too." As the scientists worked, they also spoke to the villagers. They asked them about strange sounds before the eruption. They asked about shaking ground, rising heat, or odd smells. Many villagers remembered small signs, things that seemed unimportant at the time. A quiet vibration, a warm patch of ground, a thin smoke rising from a rock. These small details became part of the scientific story. The truth was becoming clearer. The Earth had been sending signals for months. The volcano had been preparing its escape. Pressure had been building in silence. and the movement of tectonic plates gave the magma its path to the surface. The eruption was dramatic, but the cause was slow and patient. It took years for the magma to rise. It took months for the pressure to peak. It took seconds for the mountain to explode. As the scientists finished their investigation for the day, the sun slowly broke through the ash-filled sky. A small light appeared across the gray land. It was the first sunlight some villagers had seen since the eruption. One scientist looked at the volcano and said quietly, "This mountain has more stories to tell. We must keep listening." Because understanding what happened is not just about the past. It is about the future. A future where the land may change again. A future where other volcanoes may wake up. A future where science must be ready before the next surprise comes. Chapter 7. A Warning for the Future. The volcano grew quiet, but the silence after an eruption is never simple. It is never soft. It is a silence filled with questions, worries, and the heavy feeling that the story is not finished yet. As the ash slowly settled over the Afar land, scientists, villagers, and governments began to face the same thought. What happens next? When a volcano sleeps for 12,000 years and suddenly wakes up, the world must pay attention. Nature does not make big moves without meaning. Every eruption carries a message. Every ash cloud carries a warning. But what exactly was the warning this time? To answer that, we travel back to the Afar Depression, the land where continents move, crack, and change shape. We learned earlier that the plates beneath this region are pulling apart. But in this chapter, we discover what this means for the future. For millions of years, Africa has been splitting silently, not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly, like paper being torn very gently. This tear is the reason for the strange landscapes, the deep cracks, the hot springs, and the many volcanoes. Scientists believe that one day, maybe in a few million years, a new ocean will appear here. The Red Sea will expand. The Horn of Africa might separate from the continent and become its own landmass. To humans, this sounds unbelievable. But the Earth works on a timescale far longer than our lives. And the eruption of Haile Gubi showed that this great process is still very active. After the eruption, satellite images began to show something surprising. Not only had Haile Gubi moved, but pressure was rising under other volcanoes in the region. Subtle heat signatures, new cracks in the ground, small earthquakes, signals, quiet signals, but signals that scientists could not ignore. One researcher looked at the data and said, "This eruption is not the end. It may be the beginning." Villagers, too, felt the strange energy in the land. Some said the ground still vibrated at night. Others heard deep sounds under the earth, long, low sounds like distant thunder. For the people of Afar, these feelings were not just science. They were part of daily life. They have lived with the land longer than anyone. They know its rhythms. They know when something is different. And this time, something was different. Around the world, scientists gathered for emergency meetings. News reporters asked difficult questions. Airline authorities studied flight paths again and again. The world had seen how one volcano could disrupt travel, agriculture, and even air quality across several countries. The eruption proved that natural events in one place could affect people thousands of kilometers away. This raised one important question. Are we ready for more? The Afar region contains more than 50 volcanoes. Some are active, some are quiet. Some, like Haley Gooby, seem asleep, but hold ancient pressure inside. If one volcano woke up after thousands of years, could another, and another, and another? Imagine if 2 volcanoes erupted in the same year. Or 3. Imagine the ash clouds, the canceled flights, the damaged crops, the health risks. Imagine the economic shock. Imagine the panic. This is why the eruption became a global lesson. Countries began discussing new monitoring systems, better satellites, stronger sensors underground, faster communication for warnings, more cooperation between nations, because natural disasters do not respect borders. Ash does not need a passport. Earthquakes do not stop at lines on a map. Volcanoes do not care about language, politics, or distance. But the warning was not only about danger, it was also about understanding. The eruption reminded humanity of something important. We live on a living planet, a moving planet, a planet with fire in its heart and oceans in its eyes. We often think the ground is still. We often think the earth is stable. But deep below our feet, everything is always shifting. The eruption was a reminder to stay humble, to stay prepared, to stay curious, because the earth is always telling a story. A story written in magma, rock, ash, and time. As the days passed, the sky above Afar slowly began to clear. The sun returned. The wind carried the last dust away. Children played again. Animals began to search for new grass. Life continued. But something had changed. Not just in the land, not just in the volcano, but in the minds of everyone who witnessed the event. They now understood that silence does not mean safety, that calm does not mean sleep, that a quiet mountain may still hold a powerful voice. The story of Haley Gooby is not only about destruction, it is about connection between continents, between countries, between people and the earth. It is a reminder that our planet is alive, awake, and full of surprises. And as we look toward the future, one question remains. If this was the awakening of one volcano, what else is waiting beneath the surface?